the button to shoot water from my cave. If you press the button, you can...
Oh my god. How's it going, everybody? You found Nintoonist. I'm here. I'm not queer. Probably? And I know it's been a few weeks since I last uploaded a video, and that is because these last few weeks of my life have kind of been a living hell. I've been dealing with a lot of sad personal issues at home that... It's nothing that, you know, the average American family hasn't gone through at one point or more in their lives, but it's just stuff that's really taken precedence over making videos right now. And then when I actually do have the time to make videos, I don't really have the mental or physical energy to do that. But I'm here now, here to review 3 games that pretty much everybody watching this video has played before in the past. I'm of course talking about the 3 3D Mario games in the Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection. And going into this review/list thingy, I have pretty much only one rule that can only really be exemplified as such.
Nintoonist, why are you talking about the graphics on the 3D All-Star Switch version? A noob knows that they look so much better on PC.
Listen, we know. Any hardcore gamer with a brain knows that these games will look better emulated on PC. Any hardcore gamer with a brain knows that any game will look better on PC than on any console that has ever been released and will currently even be released with the upcoming consoles coming up in the next few months will ever look like. PC games always look better. That being said, I'm not going to be comparing the Switch versions to PC versions because the PC versions are technically illegal emulated ports that the common casual gamer does not even know how to emulate onto their PCs. Rather, I think it makes a lot more sense to compare the 3D All-Stars pack to their original versions of the games, seeing as how the intended design of the 3D All-Stars version of the games are intended to be touched up high, better graphics, higher quality versions of their original games. It makes no sense to compare them to emulated PC versions that are technically, in the eyes of Nintendo, not even really supposed to exist. Whether that's, a good thing or a bad thing, that's up to you. I have a whole other video on that I'll plug at the end of this one, but regardless, I don't think it makes any sense to compare them to any emulated PC versions. Rather, I think it makes a lot more sense to compare them to the originals, because that's what their intended designs are. So without any further ado, let's just get into the review. In the interest of going in order, let's start with Mario 64. For the most part, I gotta be honest, the best way I can really put it into layman's terms or sum it up as best as I can is that this is just another very solid way to play 64. The game translates very well to a Pro Controller, which is what I personally used to play all the games. I'm sure it probably functions pretty good on Joy-Cons as well, seeing as how it's not really that different unless you have any drift issues, which is a whole separate issue with Nintendo, but we're not going to be talking more on that later. For the most part, it feels really good in the hands of a Pro Controller. The sticks feel really good for moving Mario around. It controls great for the most part. The button mapping is also very, very good. The button mapping is pretty much exactly what you would expect it to be. A and B both jump. You dive with Y. You crouch with the shoulder buttons. Blah, blah, blah. Pretty much all that good stuff that you'd had in pretty much every million emulated ports of Mario 64. That being said, this port is technically in some ways different than it is compared to, at the very least, the Wii emulated port that was on the Wii's Virtual Console back in 2006, because the game looks a lot better too than it did on that console. There are both goods and bads to the touching up of Mario 64 done in this version, mostly good in my honest opinion, but there is some bad as well, and in the interest of optimism, we could talk about the good here first, and that's pretty much the advanced textures. If you're that one really weird guy in the corner of the cafeteria that doesn't really like CRT filters or vaporwave aesthetics, but you love Mario 64, I gotta be honest, this port, this version of Mario 64 is for you, because the game has a lot of very advanced textures and just different little touches up that makes it really look like it's more so on a modern console. The first thing I noticed, even before playing the 3D All-Stars pack, when I was looking at the trailers and the Direct, was the HUD. The HUD is so much more clear. Literally look at Mario's face in the HUD of the 3D All-Stars pack compared to the original. It's so much more clear and polished. Is this what it looked like in the original game, but the 64 just couldn't handle it or whatever, or it just was more pixelated in the 64 version, or it was a 2D model or something? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they redid these from scratch, or if they just really touch them up in this version. Like, look at the coin before and after, dude. Like, look at the other thing before and after. What's the other thing on the right? I'm looking at Audacity as I'm recording this. I don't remember the last thing that's on the stars. It's Mario 64. It's a game about stars, and I couldn't remember that was what was in the HUD. I'm a fake fan. But these look so good and really make it feel like they did touch the game up a little bit. And besides that, like I said, if you're that weird guy who doesn't like CRT filters, the game just looks a lot more, how do I even put it? It looks a lot more clear. Like, it's a lot brighter and smoother looking, I suppose. It really doesn't look like it's behind a CRT or whatever, which, I'm not gonna lie, like, depending on who you are, depending on who you ask, it can kind of takes away from a little bit of the magic of Mario 64. The fact that it looks as old as it is, because it is as old as it is, can kind of be considered part of the charm. But if you're looking to try something new, I gotta be honest, this is just another really great way to play Mario 64. It feels just as good as it did on the 64, it feels just as good as it did on the Wii, and it looks a little better to boot. That being said, it doesn't look as good as it frankly should. The game, and it's really dumb because this is the only game that still has this in the 3D All-Stars pack. The game is still locked at 480. It's still 480p in terms of its resolution at best, which is just dumb. I don't know why they didn't make Mario 64 widescreen. I mean, I know the 64 is only a composite console, and then it wasn't until the GameCube and the Wii, or really, I think it was just really the Wii, I don't really remember too much about the GameCube, where they added, component cables that allowed widescreen play on those consoles. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it, or if Nintendo's just lazy, because I know that you can widescreen some of these games regardless. I think it's just really, Nintendo kind of doing the bare minimum here. The fact that it's still 480, it doesn't ruin the experience by any regards. I mean, a lot of gamers, you'll hear them complaining about it, but it really doesn't take away too much from the experience. It could add more to it if it was, widescreen, but it's not, unfortunately. They just really made the game look a little better, touched up some of the textures and whatnot, and kinda called it a day, because they didn't increase the resolution at all when they, frankly, easily could have. Now, if you're a big hardcore gamer into the speedrunning community, you probably know that Mario 64 is one of the most popular speed games pretty much ever. It's got a huge community behind it. It's got, Cheese, it's got Simple Flips, it's got Puncation, like Clint Stevens, all those people who run this game a lot, blah, blah, blah. And I gotta be honest, if you're more so into Mario 64 because of its, speedrunning nature, that kind of sucks, because this is probably the worst possible version you can play in Mario 64 to speedrun the game, for pretty much the sole reason that the backwards long jump is no longer in the game. I know, blasphemy. It's just crazy. I don't know why they would do that. The reason for this is because this is a later version of the game, a more patched version of Mario 64 after the initial North American release, if you would, where they got rid of some of the glitches and really touched them up, They did the same thing with games like Melee, where there's an NA version, then a PAL version in Europe, and in the PAL version they touched up things that they sort of thought were broken, like Marth and Falco's Dares or whatever. They did that, with their non-fighting game series too, and that's unfortunately what they did in this game. You can no longer backwards jump up the stairs with the half A press, and that is kind of the biggest part of the Mario 64 speedrunning meta, so I very much doubt this game is going to be used in the speedrunning community. I doubt it's going to be popular with speedrunners. They're not going to really have any reason to buy it, unfortunately. But I guess from a casual standpoint, it makes sense. Nintendo wants to get rid of glitches that I guess people wouldn't really like. At least that's how they see it from their department. The way I see it, the casual gamer probably wouldn't care too much, but as somebody who literally works for Nintendo, I can definitely tell you, the casual demographic is Nintendo's biggest demographic, so that is the one they're going to cater to. And lastly, before we move on here, I gotta be honest, I don't know if they did some stuff to Mario's voice in this different version of the game, but it's weird. Like, sometimes on his double jump, he'll say, whoo, and it'll be a lot higher pitched than it is compared to his other jumps. Like, literally listen to this and tell me if I'm going crazy. You heard it too, right? Tell me I'm not going crazy and that you heard it too. Oh god, it's probably both. Moving on to Mario Sunshine, the 3D All-Stars Collection seller, the first time that they have ever ported Mario Sunshine anywhere onto any of their consoles. I gotta imagine it's gotta be the best one in the collection, right? If it's gonna be the big game seller, the first time that many players are gonna get to experience Mario Sunshine in all its beautiful water texture glory. No, guys, I'm just gonna be real with you. I'm gonna be forefront with you here. Unfortunately, Mario Sunshine is the worst port in this collection for multiple reasons. It sucks, but it's definitely, compared to the other two, it's the worst one in the collection for several reasons, which I will explain to you now. The first reason is the controls. Sunshine has the best movement out of any game in this collection, bar none. Some people say Sunshine has better movement than Odyssey, and I personally think that's debatable. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but Sunshine's movement is pretty incredible, and it makes it an incredibly popular speed game. Unfortunately, though, in this version of the game, some of the button mapping is just really, really whack. I know it sounds weird coming out of my mouth, but whack is pretty much the only word that really comes to mind when I think of how they map the buttons over to this game. And this is for several reasons, really. First and foremost, the way you shot the water out of FLUDD in the original Mario Sunshine is by pressing the button down either softly or lightly. The GameCube controller did not have analog triggers, meaning that you were able to press the button further down first before clicking it down to hit the button harder, and this actually had an impact on how you shot water in Mario Sunshine, because if you held the button lightly, you could move around, making Mario run while shooting the water, and if you held the button all the way down, you were able to stand still and aim the water manually wherever you wanted. This was huge in terms of pretty much the core gameplay and mechanics of the game, because it's all about the FLUDD. It's all about shooting water. It's a huge part of the movement. It's a huge part of the meta. The meta. You know what I'm trying to say. It's a huge part of the game in general, and just pretty much the core gameplay of it at large. And as we all, were taking guesses beforehand, we know that both the Joy-Cons and the Switch Pro Controller don't exactly have, very soft pressing triggers. They have more so tactile ones. The ones that you just sort of press down once and that's it. So how is this going to work translating to FLUDD? Well, I personally always theorized that you were going to be able to spray the water while moving with one trigger button, and then you were going to be able to shoot the water holding down with one of the bumpers or something like that, because unlike the GameCube controller, there is an L button and a ZL button and an R button and a ZR button. There are literally more buttons, so I would imagine that they would just map them in different ways, and my prediction was completely correct. That's what they wound up doing in this version of Sunshine, but they just did it so poorly, in my opinion. The biggest reason here is because the way it works is that you actually stand still and shoot FLUDD by holding down R, and you run around while shooting FLUDD by holding ZR and the right trigger, and it just feels so bad. In my opinion, it should just be the other way around. I figured if anything, you would want to hold down the bigger, more tactile, trigger-looking button to aim and shoot FLUDD manually, and then if you wanted to just run around pressing it lightly, you would do it with the bumper button. One that just, it just makes more sense to me in that department. I don't know how to describe it. It makes for a very, very weird game feel, and frankly, it feels just so ass backwards. It just feels like you should be holding down the bumper button to run around and shoot FLUDD, and then you should hold down the trigger to stand still and shoot FLUDD, but it's completely the other way around. It's like, if you've played Sunshine on the GameCube, it's gonna feel so weird going in with the Pro Controller, or even the Joy-Cons really. It's gonna feel backwards, considering that, you held the button all the way down to stand still and shoot FLUDD compared to the other way around. It's just dumb and doesn't really make any sense, and this really isn't that big of a deal considering that you can actually remap buttons on the Pro Controller manually in the Switch menu, but you shouldn't have to do that to have a better experience with this game. They should have just had, better mapping decisions, or, I don't know. They should have just had better mapping decisions. And this one's a real kicker here. You also have to use A to select options and menus. Now, if you played pretty much any Nintendo game, you're probably like, oh, Nintoonist, what's the big deal? Well, you can use A to jump, but you'll probably more often be using B to jump here, since you dive with the Y button. So it's just a lot easier to translate your thumb from one button to another to do a jump dive by hitting B and then hitting Y. Like, when you're playing in game, I very much doubt you're going to be hitting A and then hitting Y to be doing any, advanced maneuvers in Mario Sunshine. So you'll more often wind up using B to just jump and whatnot, except B doesn't work in the menus, so you literally have to use a separate button that you never really use in-game for specifically the menus. And so every time you get a shine in the game, you now have to stop using the B button and move your thumb over to the A button to just select an option every single time. It's just like you have to remap your mind every time you switch from actually playing the game to selecting a menu option. And I know it sounds like I'm picking it like, dirt here or whatever, but it's just... It's kind of an annoyance. Like, why would they literally make it so you have to use, like, this particular button for the menus, and then it's the one button that you never really have to use in-game? It just doesn't make any sense at all. It's not like a start button where you know that you only need to use this to really pause the menus and whatnot, and it doesn't have any actual impact on gameplay. This is the A button. This is something that you should be using for gameplay, but it's just because of the button mapping decisions, it's not optimal to do that. So the fact that you literally have to use it for menus, it's a minor annoyance, but it's honestly baffling. Like, this game still feels like it was designed around and meant for the GameCube controller, and it unfortunately just does not translate well to the Pro Controller. Like, when I play Mario Sunshine, it still feels like this whole game was designed around using the GameCube controller, and that I'm not supposed to be using the controller I'm holding. If you can find a way to play with the GameCube controller instead, to be honest, I've never tried it, so I don't know if it's even compatible, if I'm being honest, but if it is, I would highly recommend using that instead. Oh, and did I mention that when you're standing still shooting FLUDD, that they totally inverted the controls from the original version? And why? Because change. That's why. It's like, it reminds me of Mob of the Dead compared to Blood of the Dead. Now, I understand all of you watching this probably don't know what I'm talking about, but I'll sum it up. Call of Duty Zombies, Blood of the Dead is a remake of Mob of the Dead, and Mob of the Dead is one of the greatest maps that they've ever put out. In Blood of the Dead, they just changed a lot of minor things in it that really didn't need any fixing from the original version for the sake of innovation, and that's kinda what they did to FLUDD in this game. They inverted the controls for why? It feels so much worse now. I mean, I guess they might have thought that, like, oh, little kids are gonna hit up on the stick and therefore they're gonna think that the water should shoot up. But it just feels so much worse than the original version, in my opinion, and honestly, this is the change that really messes with me the most. Like, it's already annoying how, the button mapping is in this game with how you use the right trigger to run and shoot, and then you use the bumper to stand and shoot. It should totally be the other way around. But the other change bothers me more, because at least you can change the button mapping manually in the Switch menu. You can't do that with the sticks, I don't think. I mean, maybe you can, but I don't know. Either way, it's just, again, the button mapping in this game, just awful. Second, we have the frame rate issues. That's right, it's unfortunately another Battle for Bikini Bottom rehydrated. Although not as bad as Battle for Bikini Bottom rehydrated. At the very least, not for, like, the main, area of that game. I don't know what it is with Switch ports, man, that makes this kind of thing happen, but the game, unfortunately, does have frame rate issues that it did not have in the original version on the GameCube. I just don't see any excuse for this, but it's mostly for pulling up the map menu. Like, take a look at this. When you press, whatever button it is, I think ZL to pull up the map, which is not something you really have to do often, it's just something to really check your progress. The game drops so many frames. So you think, oh, this, it's just this one spot of the game, not too big of a deal, but there are spots where the game just drops frames too when it didn't do that on the GameCube. Like, what you're looking at right now, this is not my video messing up in the rendering process. This is just the game. Like, when you're just hovering around Delfino Plaza, in certain spots, if there's just too much on screen, the game just drops frames. And what is the excuse for that? This sucks the most, because this is the only time that they have ported Sunshine literally anywhere. If you wanted to get Sunshine beforehand, you either had to order it online for about, $69, and then, or just have it shipped to your house. Hopefully it doesn't get scratched or damaged or anything, or buy it from a local game store that you may or may not have wherever you live. This is the only time they ported Sunshine anywhere, and the game is more accessible to the common casual player than it's literally ever been, and it's just plagued with issues that it didn't have in the original version of the game. It's just stupid, really. That being said, it's not unplayable. The widescreen does look great. The game is widescreen on console for the first time, which it was not on the original version of the game, of course. So it does look a lot better in terms of widescreen. Some textures look a lot better. Some textures kind of look a little bit worse, but I would say that's not really most of them. Like, for the most part, the game definitely does still look a little bit better than it did on the GameCube, but really not by that much. They could have touched it up a lot more, but they, again, same issues with 64. They kind of just didn't. It's another situation where graphically they did the bare minimum, but I mean, I guess that's nothing really new when it comes to Nintendo. But the game still has wonderful mobility. It still has probably some of, if not the best mobility out of any 3D Mario game, and for the most part, it does look better than it did on the Cube, albeit not as much as it should. So, I mean, if you're looking forward to playing Sunshine for the first time, if you're a kid who's never played it before, I'm gonna be honest, unfortunately, this is probably the worst way to play Sunshine. It'll play a lot better on the GameCube for the most part, so I very much apologize. If you can play it on the GameCube, I would say do that instead. But if you want to play it on the Switch in the 3D All-Stars collection, it's still a good way to play it. Just really, it's the worst way to play it, but it's still an amazing game at the end of the day, so it's still worth a shot the way I see it. Unfortunately, though, it is definitely the worst one in the collection. And finally, Mario Galaxy, and I'm just gonna put it into layman's terms, forth and outright for you guys. This is the definitive way to play Super Mario Galaxy. It is the best port in the collection. It looks phenomenal. Galaxy looks so beautiful in this version of the game. My only gripe with Galaxy as a game, and I'm talking about the original version on the Wii, my only gripe, and frankly the only thing I think that was even slightly wrong with that game, was back in the day, being on the Wii made it so that it was on a non-HD console, since Nintendo graphically is always a generation behind. Even as a young lad, I thought that was tragic. Like, if you play 64 or if you play Sunshine, right? Like, it looks great on the Switch, with the, slightly upgraded textures and graphics and widescreen on Sunshine and whatnot. But if you played it on a CRT, you would tell yourself, oh, this looks great still. It looks fine, because this was how it looked in its time. This game feels like it was meant to be played on that. Even as a child, I could tell that Galaxy was just begging for more. Its textures, its environments, its visuals, the music, I mean, that has nothing to do with how it looks, but it has to do with, the immersion, with how amazing Galaxy's just whole feel and environment and, just visuals really were. Even as a young child, that game, I knew it was begging to be played in 1080. It was begging to be widescreen, man. And I hate to break my golden rule here, the golden rule that I said at the beginning of the video. But yeah, and it looks pretty amazing on PC in 1080, HD, 60 FPS, all that stuff, blah blah blah. And now we can finally do that on console like we were meant to do with Galaxy. And that's so much better than playing it on a PC and trying to emulate a Wii remote on, your PC and stuff, which is just so much more work. And speaking of, Wii remotes and sensor bars and whatnot, you don't even need that anymore. The controls feel great, man. The gyroscope on the controller is fantastic for this game. Even on the Pro, as I'm sure we all knew, we were all kind of worried with how Galaxy was going to play on the Switch. We all thought to ourselves, okay, there's no sensor bar or nothing. How the hell are we going to collect star bits? Well, on the Joy-Cons, it makes sense. You literally just point at the screen with the right Joy-Con, pretty much, like you would with a Wii remote on the Wii, and the game functions exactly like how it did back then. But if you're a Pro Controller guy like me, and you think the Pro Controller is one of the best controllers ever put out by any gaming company, you think to yourself, oh man, how am I gonna use this for Galaxy, man? Like, do I have to use the Joy-Cons to play Mario Galaxy on the Switch? Damn it, dude, I didn't want to do that. No, you don't have to. The gyroscope on the Pro Controller feels fantastic for collecting star bits. Like, no sensor bar required, of course, because of the infrared, stuff in the controllers and whatnot. All you have to do is press R to center at any time. Just press R on the controller to center the cursor in the center of the screen, and then if it gets decalibrated, you can just move it around again to collect star bits. It feels... low-key, it feels better than how it did on the Wii. I'm not gonna lie, on the Wii with the Wii Remote, when you were collecting star bits, every now and again, if you were playing Galaxy for, hours at a time like I was when I was a kid, your wrist would eventually get tired from just turning the Wii Remote around with, just to collect the star bits and whatnot. And now with the Pro Controller, it feels way more intuitive, it feels more natural, and like more so in one fell swoop than it did in Galaxy. And Galaxy, even originally on the Wii still felt amazing. But now you can play the game with like a normal, beautiful looking Switch Pro Controller, and you can play the game still like how it was meant to and how it was designed to. You try to use the Pro Controller for like Sunshine, and it feels awful. Like, it just does not feel like you are supposed to play the game with this kind of controller. It still feels like you're supposed to be using a GameCube controller and that the game was built around that. They adapted Mario Galaxy to the Switch's peripherals so beautifully, so much better than they did for 64, and miles better than they did for Sunshine, and that's just not even close. And to top it all off, you don't even have to use the motion controls to spin jump like you had to do in Mario Galaxy on the Wii. You can now spin jump with the Y button. That's right, you have a button to spin jump now. It's such a nice decision, man, and it's one that you don't even have to use if you prefer the motion controls. If you still prefer to shake the controller to spin jump, you still can do that. So if you prefer motion controls, that's great, and if you don't, you have a button to map to be able to do it with that instead. I gotta say, Nintendo, you couldn't have given us that option with this. Too hard. I'm so happy that kids are going to be able to experience all of these games, regardless of, some of their wrongdoings, in my opinion, at least in these ports, but I'm so happy that they're going to be able to experience Galaxy particularly this way. That game has such a beautiful, quiet sadness to it, and such a beautiful backstory for a video game as well, and a Mario game. Like, literally, like, listen to the music that's playing in the video right now. Listen to Rosalina in the observatory, and tell me that full orchestra music as the music for the overworld, for the hub world, isn't something that can be universally recognized. It's not necessarily like a music type that only originated in one country and didn't really travel or become popular in other spots of the world. No, that kind of full orchestra ensemble, that's the kind of music that's universally known world over, man. That's a universal language, and that's just another part of the reason that I think Mario Galaxy is just a damn near perfect game, and I just think it's a beautiful thing that people are going to be able to experience it in the highest quality home console possible way. And I just think that's wonderful. I can't wait to start selling this game to people, man. They just nailed everything. Honestly, this is just the best way to play Galaxy, bar none, and in my personal opinion, this game is worth the $60 price tag for Mario Galaxy alone. Well, maybe not a $60 price tag. Maybe if they lowered it to $50, it would be more worth it, since it is technically a port or a remaster or whatever. But you get the point. If you buy this game just to play Galaxy alone, honestly, it's worth it. I truly mean that. This is the best way to play Galaxy. And I don't know what you're doing still watching this video. Just go get All-Stars, man. Go get All-Stars. It's a limited run. What are you doing? Run! Run! I hope you enjoyed this video, my friends, as much as I enjoyed making it. And if you did, feel free to give it a like down below. That helps me so much more than you know. And if you really like the video and you really want to help me grow as a YouTuber, you can go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and then be sure to hit the bell right next to it as well, so you will be notified as soon as I make a new video. And if that isn't soon enough for you, you should also follow me on my Twitter at twitter.com/Nintoonist to follow all my whereabouts, whether I'm commentating a tournament in Tri-State, whether it's a Smash tournament or a Mario Kart tournament, or whenever my next videos are coming out and whatever videos are up next on the schedule, and just the latest whereabouts of Nintoonist in general. If you want to keep up with me and you really want to know what I'm doing on the day-to-day, that's pretty much the best place you can possibly do it. I really hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, you know, all that good stuff down below. If you'd like, go down in the comments and tell me what your favorite port in the collection was, whether it was 64, whether it was Galaxy, whether it was Sunshine, or if you're delusional and you say it was Galaxy 2 because, like me, you very much wish it was still in the pack. I love you guys. I hope to see you in the next video. Hopefully it won't be too long next time, but I just had some stuff to deal with at home that was a little bit more important. I got plenty of more stuff on the way, whether it's Smash Excellence or Top 10 list, blah, 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 blah. Hopefully I can find the motivation and the time to do it, but I got some pretty big stuff on the back burner and a lot of big announcements coming very, very soon to the channel and on my Twitter as well. So, with all that being said, I've been talking too long here. Hope you guys enjoyed. I love you. Have a wonderful day, evening, or night, and I will gladly see you next time. Ciao.